Hey everybody, Mr. Wagner here. Today we are going to do breakout 6. What you see in front of you right now is breakout 5, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to breakout 6, and let's get going. So the first thing that I want to do with breakout 6 is I want to do a little bit of refactoring. What you'll find when you're coding is the more programming you do along the way, the more you kind of want to change this variable or delete some code or do things like that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's scroll on down, and line 34 through about 41, that's when I was explaining how to do one brick or just a group of bricks. So I want to go ahead and get rid of that. So let's delete that, make that look pretty. And let's see here, line 35 and 36, we can drop those. Okay, so now we have bricks equals an empty list and then some brick stuff, and then we go on down. Now, I noticed that I have brick size is 45, okay? When I was doing my notes for creating this, brick size 35 seems to work a little bit better. Plus, I don't really like to use brick size because that's really the brick width, okay? So let's go ahead and do a find and replace on brick size and change that to brick width. To do that, we can go up to edit in our idle thing and do replace. And oh, look, I've already set it up there. So brick size, we're going to replace with brick width. So I'm going to do a replace all. And I want you to notice it changed it right here on line 35 and in here brick width and also brick width here. Now, since we have brick width, let's go ahead and create a brick height, because I think that will be a little bit more generic, and it's always better to use variables instead of like hard-coded numbers. So let's go ahead and change that to brick height to 20, and I'll just copy and paste that in there. Okay, so so that cleans up sort of the top, but let's clean up the bottom where we were actually drawing the bricks. Okay, so let's scroll on down. Okay, so here we are. Line 87 is where we draw the first brick, and then lines 88 through 91, this is how we drew the bricks when we were just drawing them direct from the list. So let's get rid of those. And it looks like line 87 gets rid of this last little bit. Okay, so let's get rid of that too. Okay, so that should be 10 bricks, all at you know, the Y value of 50. Let's run that, make sure we don't have any errors. Always good to keep running it every so often. And sure enough, we have our bricks, so very good. Let's, so what I'm gonna explain to you now is the concept of functions, okay? Now functions are little bits of code that can be called anywhere in your program, but you define them once, okay? Now, in the case of this particular program, this little bit of code right here, say from line 34 through 41, there's a really good chance we're going to be calling that again. We're going to be calling that little bit of code because, say for instance, we finished a level and we want to redraw a whole bunch of new bricks. It would be nice to have a little bit of code to just do that, okay? And programmers, we do that kind of stuff all the time, and we use functions to do that. Now, I'm going to introduce functions such that it'll be easy for you to understand. Okay, so let's go right up here to the top of our program, say after line 8, after our imports, but before we do any real stuff. And that's really kind of where you want to have your functions defined. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to define just a little program or just a little function that will print something. Okay, so we're going to say def, and we're going to say print I'm awesome. Okay, and then we need 2 parentheses and a colon, and then everything within this indentation is part of this print I'm awesome function. Okay, so we're going to say print quote I'm awesome quote parenthesis return. Okay, so we have this function called print I'm awesome. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and say, you know, maybe right after we define the paddle, I'm just going to say print I'm awesome, parenthesis, parenthesis. And what we're doing here on line 38 is I am calling the function print I'm awesome. And as the code goes down, it will call that, and then it will go up to line 10 and run what is defined in print I'm awesome, which is the code print I'm awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that. And what you'll see here in our shell, that is, if I can pull it up here, is it says I'm awesome. Now, I want you to notice how there is no apostrophe in I'm, and that's kind of like a little bit annoying. So let's take care of that. Now, in Python, if you define a string, you can define a string in one of 2 ways. You can either use a single quote around the string, or you can use a double quote around the string. Personally, I like to use double quotes just because that's what I got used to. But what's neat is if you use double quotes, then you can actually use a single quote in the middle to say, you know, I'm awesome, okay? Now, if you use single quotes, then you can stuff a double quote in the middle. And there's a lot of other tricks you can do with strings. But just so you know, I like to use double quotes, but you can use single quotes. But if I'm putting a single quote within a string, double quote it, and that'll work out well. Okay, that's just a little aside programming. Okay, so now if I run it, run module, you'll notice it says I apostrophe M, awesome. Okay. Let me close that. Okay, so I've defined the function print I'm awesome. Now let me show you another trick that Python programmers can do, and that's what's known as return a value. Okay, so a function can be called and then it returns a value. Now in the case of print I'm awesome, what we are going to do is we're going to return a string, and we're going to say yes, you are, exclamation point, quote. So I've defined the print I'm awesome, I print something, and then I return yes you are. Now when I return it, it doesn't really do anything unless I do something with that value when I call it. So let's take a look at that. Down here on line 38, where we call print I'm awesome, I'm going to say message equals print I'm awesome. Okay, so when print I'm awesome returns, it will return that string into this variable called message, and then we can print the message. Okay, so let's try running that. Run module, and you'll notice down here it says I'm awesome, yes you are, and you are awesome. Okay, so to go over that again, we call the function print I'm awesome here in line 39. It goes up to the top where print I'm awesome is defined. It does whatever print I'm awesome does, and then it returns a value. And then when it returns that returned value goes into this variable called message, and then we print the message. Okay, seems a little bit silly, but I'd like you to know how the program flows, okay? Because we are going to be using this function now to define a function called make bricks. Okay, so we're gonna go back up to the top. Let's try maybe like line 13 or maybe line 14. We're gonna say def make bricks, parenthesis, parenthesis. And in here, we are going to make all these bricks. Now, we already have the code to make the bricks, so let's just copy and paste the code in there and then work with that. So we're gonna scroll down a little bit. And our brick making code is here between lines 44 and lines 51. So I'm gonna select that. I'm gonna hit Command X to cut it. And I'm gonna paste this right here in make bricks. Now, if you notice, I'm not tabbed over, so we need to tab over all of this code such that it's part of the make bricks code. Okay, and I think that should do it. So we have define make bricks, and it says, let's change bricks here to my bricks, okay? So my bricks is an empty list, and then we have to say my bricks.append okay. So now by the end of our make bricks function, we have this list called my bricks of all of our bricks, and we really need to return that list. Otherwise we can't use it, okay? So just take a second and think about that little bit of code. And now we're gonna go down where we actually need bricks, and we are going to say, like line 53 here. Okay, so we are going to say bricks, okay, and then we're gonna say equals make bricks, parenthesis, parenthesis, okay? Bricks equals make bricks. Okay, so when we call make bricks, it jumps up to the top here, it creates an empty list called make bricks, it defines everything, it creates the bricks, and then it returns my bricks, and then my bricks gets returned and goes into the variable bricks, and then down at the bottom of our program, we're actually drawing the bricks. So this should work when we run it. Hopefully we won't have any errors, but we might. And if we do, that's okay. Just remember, coding is like that. You are just creating, and you know, you're gonna make mistakes. So let's run. Aha, I missed something. A colon is expected. Okay, so def make bricks, we always need the colon after that. Okay, so run module. And sure enough, it works exactly the same way. Works exactly the same way. Okay, now, I know some of you programmers, people who have already been introduced to programmers, we talk about, we have this thing called parameters. Now, I'm gonna cover parameters in breakout 7, so I'm purposefully leaving those out. But, you know, don't be afraid, I'm gonna get through them. Let me just check my notes real quick. Okay, so I think that's it for breakout 6. Let's stop there, and we'll continue on with breakout 7. Everybody, I'll see you there. Bye.